Mr. Ahmed Hassan sat in his luxurious office overlooking the bustling streets of Karachi. His fingers drummed against the mahogany desk as he reviewed the monthly reports from his textile empire. At 55, he had built an empire from nothing, starting with a small shop in the old city and expanding into one of Pakistan's largest textile manufacturers. His wealth had brought him respect, power, and influence, but today his mind was elsewhere. His daughter Fatima had been acting strangely for weeks. The 23-year-old had always been his pride and joy, brilliant in her studies and dutiful in her behavior. She had completed her degree in literature from Karachi University with top honors, and Ahmed had grand plans for her future. Several wealthy families had already expressed interest in marriage proposals, and he was carefully considering which alliance would benefit both families the most. But lately, Fatima seemed distant and distracted. She would stare out of windows for hours, barely touching her meals, and had lost interest in the family business discussions that once fascinated her. Ahmed attributed this to the stress of post-graduation life and the pressure of impending marriage decisions. Little did he know that his daughter's heart was already taken. Fatima had met Dr. James Mitchell 6 months earlier at a medical conference where she had volunteered as a translator. James was a 30-year-old British cardiologist who had come to Pakistan as part of a humanitarian mission to provide free heart surgeries for underprivileged children. He was tall, with kind blue eyes and a gentle manner that immediately caught Fatima's attention. Unlike the Pakistani men she knew, James treated her as an equal, valuing her opinions and intelligence. Their first conversation lasted 3 hours. James was fascinated by Fatima's knowledge of Urdu poetry and her insights into Pakistani culture, while she was amazed by his dedication to helping others, despite having lucrative opportunities back in London. What started as professional interaction slowly blossomed into something deeper. They began meeting secretly at coffee shops in different parts of the city, careful to avoid areas where Fatima might be recognized. James would tell her about his life in England, his medical school days at Oxford, and his dream of making healthcare accessible to everyone regardless of their economic status. Fatima shared her love for literature, her dreams of perhaps pursuing a master's degree, and her conflicted feelings about the traditional expectations placed upon her. As weeks turned into months, their friendship evolved into love. James was unlike anyone Fatima had ever met. He encouraged her ambitions, listened to her thoughts without judgment, and never made her feel that her worth was tied to her family's wealth or her potential as someone's wife. For the first time in her life, Fatima felt truly understood and valued for who she was as an individual. James, too, had never experienced such a connection. Despite cultural differences, he found in Fatima a kindred spirit who challenged his thinking and broadened his worldview. Her compassion for others matched his own, and her intelligence impressed him daily. He began to envision a future where they could work together, perhaps establishing a medical foundation that combined his expertise with her organizational skills and cultural understanding. However, both knew that their relationship existed in a bubble that would eventually burst. Ahmed Hassan was a traditional man who took pride in his family's reputation and standing in society. The idea of his daughter marrying a foreigner, regardless of his profession or character, would be unthinkable. James understood the complexity of the situation and never pressured Fatima, but he also couldn't ignore his growing feelings. The turning point came when James received news that his humanitarian mission was being extended for another year. This meant he would be staying in Pakistan longer than originally planned, but it also meant that hiding their relationship would become increasingly difficult. Fatima was torn between her love for James and her loyalty to her family. Ahmed, meanwhile, had been receiving pressure from his wife and relatives to finalize Fatima's marriage. Mrs. Hassan had been dropping hints about suitable proposals, and the extended family was beginning to whisper about why such an accomplished girl remained unmarried at 23. Ahmed himself was eager to see his daughter settled with a respectable family, preferably one that could strengthen his business connections. One evening, as Ahmed observed his daughter picking at her dinner while lost in thought, he decided it was time for a serious conversation. He had always prided himself on being a good father, who provided everything his children needed. His son was already married and working in the family business, but Fatima had always been special to him. She was intelligent, well-educated, and carried herself with a dignity that made him proud. "Fatima," he said gently, "your mother and I have been thinking. The Malik family has expressed serious interest in a proposal. Their son Tariq has just returned from America with an MBA, and they're a very respectable family with good business connections." Fatima's heart sank. She had been dreading this conversation, knowing it was inevitable but hoping it could be delayed. "Baba, I'm not ready for marriage yet. Can we wait a little longer?" Hamid studied his daughter's face, noting the sadness in her eyes that he had been observing for weeks. "Beta, you're 23 now. It's the right age for marriage. Waiting too long isn't good for a girl's reputation. The Maliks are good people, and Tariq is well-educated and settled." That night, Fatima lay awake staring at the ceiling, tears flowing silently down her cheeks. She knew she had to tell James about the marriage proposal, but she also knew that time was running out. For them, the weight of disappointing her father, whom she loved dearly, pressed heavily on her chest. Yet the thought of marrying someone else while loving James seemed equally unbearable. The next day, she met James at their usual coffee shop, her heart heavy with the burden of the decision she knew she had to make soon. Little did she know that this conversation would set in motion a series of events that would change all their lives forever. The small coffee shop in Clifton buzzed with the usual afternoon crowd, but Fatima barely noticed the conversations around her. She sat across from James, her hands wrapped tightly around her untouched cup of chai, struggling to find the words that would shatter both their worlds. James immediately sensed something was wrong. In the 6 months he had known Fatima, he had learned to read her expressions like a familiar book. The brightness that usually lit up her face when she saw him was replaced by a deep sadness that made his chest tighten with worry. "Fatima, what's troubling you?" he asked softly, reaching across the table to gently touch her hand. "You've seemed distant for days." Taking a shaky breath, Fatima finally met his eyes. "James, my father spoke to me yesterday about marriage. There's a proposal from a family he respects. He wants me to meet the boy next week." The words hit James like a physical blow. He had known this day would come, had tried to prepare himself for it, but the reality was far more painful than he had imagined. He sat back in his chair, his mind racing through possibilities, trying to find a solution that seemed increasingly impossible. "What did you tell him?" James asked, his voice carefully controlled despite the turmoil inside. "I asked for more time, but I could see the confusion in his eyes. He doesn't understand why I'm hesitating. In his world, this is a good match with a respectable family. He thinks he's doing what's best for me." James nodded slowly, understanding the impossible position Fatima was in. During their months together, she had helped him understand the complexities of Pakistani family dynamics, the weight of honor and reputation, and how individual desires often had to bow to collective family interests. "Fatima," he said carefully, "I need to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest with me. If there were no obstacles, if your family situation were different, what would you want?" Tears welled up in Fatima's eyes as she looked at this man who had changed her entire perspective on life and love. "You know the answer to that, James. But wanting something and being able to have it are two very different things." James leaned forward, his blue eyes intense with emotion. "What if we talked to your father? What if I asked for your hand in marriage properly? I'm a doctor, I have a stable career, and I respect your culture and religion. Maybe if he got to know me." "James, no." Fatima's voice was firm despite her tears. "You don't understand how impossible that would be. My father would never accept a foreign son-in-law, no matter how good a person you are. It would bring shame to our family, name in his community. He's worked too hard building his reputation to risk it." But James couldn't let go of the idea so easily. "Fatima, love doesn't recognize borders or nationalities. Surely your father, as an intelligent businessman, would see that character and love matter more than nationality? Fatima shook her head sadly. You're thinking like a Westerner, James. Here, marriage isn't just between two individuals. It's between families, communities, and social circles. My father has certain expectations and responsibilities that you might not fully comprehend. That evening, James couldn't concentrate on his medical reports. He kept thinking about Fatima's tears and the defeat in her voice. He had seen her face light up when discussing literature, watched her passionately argue about social issues, and witnessed her joy when they talked about their dreams. The thought of all that brightness being extinguished in a loveless marriage made him feel physically ill. Meanwhile, in the Hassan household, Ahmed noticed his daughter's continued melancholy. During dinner, she barely spoke, and when Mrs. Hassan excitedly discussed wedding preparations and guest lists for the upcoming meeting with the Malik family, Fatima simply nodded absently. After dinner, Ahmed called his daughter to his study. The room was lined with books and business awards, testament to his journey from humble beginnings to remarkable success. Family photographs adorned one wall, showing happier times when Fatima's smile was genuine and bright. Beta, sit down, Ahmed said gently, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. I'm concerned about you. For weeks now you've seemed unhappy. Is there something troubling you that you haven't told me? Fatima looked at her father, this man who had worked tirelessly to provide her with the best education, the finest clothes, and a comfortable life. She saw the genuine concern in his eyes and felt the familiar tug of guilt at deceiving him. I'm fine, Baba. Just nervous about the future, I suppose. Ahmed studied his daughter's face, noting the shadows under her eyes and the forced nature of her smile. Fatima, I've been thinking, if you're not ready for marriage, we can wait a few more months. There's no urgent rush. Your happiness is important to me. The kindness in his voice made Fatima's heart ache even more. She realized that her father truly believed he was acting in her best interests, making decisions based on his love for her and his understanding of what would secure her future happiness and stability. The Malik boy is well educated and comes from a good family, Ahmed continued. But if you feel uncertain, we can look at other proposals. There are several other families who have expressed interest. Fatima felt trapped between two worlds. On one side was the life her father envisioned for her, secure and respectable within their community's framework. On the other was the possibility of a different kind of life with James, filled with love and partnership, but requiring her to break free from everything she had known. That night, she called James and told him about her conversation with her father. He's being patient with me, James. He's not forcing me into anything immediately, but I can see the worry in his eyes. He doesn't understand why I'm hesitating about what he considers a good match. James listened quietly, then said something that surprised her. Fatima, what if I converted to Islam? Would that make a difference to your father? The question caught Fatima off guard. She had never considered this possibility, and it both touched and alarmed her. James, you can't change your religion for someone else. That's not how faith works, and it wouldn't be genuine. But what if I genuinely wanted to learn about Islam? What if, through you, I've already begun to appreciate its teachings? Fatima was quiet for a long moment, considering this unexpected development. Could there be a path forward that she hadn't considered? Or was James grasping at impossible solutions because he, like her, couldn't bear the thought of losing what they had found together? The conversation ended with more questions than answers, but it planted a seed of possibility that neither of them could ignore. However, they had no idea that the very next day would bring an encounter that would force all these simmering tensions to the surface in the most dramatic way possible. The morning sun streamed through the windows of Ahmed Hassan's office as he prepared for what he thought would be a routine day of business meetings. He had scheduled appointments with several potential partners and was reviewing contracts when his secretary knocked on the door. Sir, there's a Dr. James Mitchell here to see you. He says it's regarding your daughter and that it's very important. Ahmed's eyebrows furrowed in confusion. He didn't recognize the name, and he certainly couldn't imagine why any doctor would need to discuss Fatima with him. His daughter was healthy and they had a family physician they'd used for years. "Send him in," Ahmed said, his curiosity overriding his busy schedule. James entered the office with determined steps, though his heart was pounding. He had spent the entire night deciding whether to take this bold step, ultimately concluding that his love for Fatima was worth the risk of facing her father's potential wrath. He was dressed in his best suit, carrying himself with the professional confidence that served him well in medical settings. Ahmed stood to greet his unexpected visitor, taking in the tall, well-dressed foreign man who approached with obvious nervousness despite his formal demeanor. "Mr. Hassan, thank you for seeing me without an appointment. I'm Dr. James Mitchell. I'm a cardiologist currently working with the Children's Heart Foundation here in Karachi." Ahmed shook the offered hand, noting the firm grip and direct eye contact. "Please sit down, doctor. How can I help you? My secretary mentioned this concerns." "My daughter?" James took a deep breath, knowing that the next few minutes would determine the course of his and Fatima's future. "Mr. Hassan, I need to be completely honest with you about something very important. I've been seeing your daughter Fatima for the past 6 months, and I'm deeply in love with her." The words hit Ahmed like a thunderbolt. For a moment, he sat, frozen, processing what he had just heard. His daughter, his precious Fatima, had been secretly meeting with this foreign man. The implications crashed over him in waves. The deception, the potential scandal, the threat to family honor. "What did you just say?" Ahmed's voice was dangerously low, the kind of controlled anger that his business rivals had learned to fear. James maintained his composure, though he could see the storm building in the older man's eyes. "Sir, I know this comes as a shock, and I know I should have approached you sooner, but I wanted to be certain of my feelings and intentions before involving you." Ahmed rose from his chair, his hands gripping the edge of his desk. "You have been meeting my daughter secretly for 6 months, behind my back? Do you have any idea what you've done to our family's reputation?" "Mr. Hassan, please let me explain. I met Fatima at a medical conference where she was volunteering. Our relationship developed naturally over time, based on mutual respect and genuine affection. I assure you that our interactions have been completely honorable." The word honorable seemed to inflame Ahmed further. "Honorable? You call sneaking? Around behind a father's back honorable? In our culture, doctor, if a man is interested in a woman, he approaches her family first. He doesn't conduct secret relationships that could ruin her reputation." James could see that his approach was backfiring, but he pressed on. "Sir, I understand your anger, and I take full responsibility for not approaching you earlier. But I'm here now because I want to do the right thing. I want to ask for Fatima's hand in marriage." The silence that followed was deafening. Ahmed stared at James as if he had suggested something completely absurd, which, in Ahmed's worldview, he had. "Marriage." Ahmed's voice rose slightly. "You think you can just walk into my office and ask to marry my daughter? Do you know who I am? Do you know what our family represents in this community?" James straightened in his chair. "Mr. Hassan, I know you're a successful businessman with a reputation to uphold. I also know that you love your daughter and want what's best for her. I believe I can make her happy." Ahmed began pacing behind his desk, his mind racing. "Doctor, you seem like an educated man, so let me educate you about something. My daughter is not just any girl. She comes from a respectable family with traditions and values. She cannot marry just anyone who claims to love her. I'm not just anyone, Mr. Hassan. I'm a qualified doctor with a stable career. I have no criminal record, no debts, and I've dedicated my life to helping others. What more could you want in a son-in-law?" Ahmed stopped pacing and fixed James with a steely gaze. "What I want, doctor, is for my daughter to marry someone from our community, someone who shares our values, our religion, and our way of life, someone who will keep her connected to her roots, not take her away to a foreign country." James had anticipated this objection. "Mr. Hassan, I've been living in Pakistan for almost a year now. I've grown to love this country and its people. I would be willing to stay here permanently. As for religion, I've been studying Islam and would be honored to convert." The mention of conversion seemed to surprise Ahmed, but not in the way James had hoped. You would convert to Islam just to marry my daughter? What kind of faith is that? Religion isn't something you change like clothes, doctor. It's supposed to be a deeply held belief, not a convenience for marriage. James felt his carefully prepared arguments crumbling. Sir, my interest in Islam began independently of my relationship with Fatima. Through our conversations, I've come to appreciate the beauty and wisdom of Islamic teachings. Ahmed sat back down, his expression a mixture of anger and disappointment. Doctor, even if I believed your conversion would be genuine, which I don't, there are other considerations. What will my relatives say? What will my business associates think? What will people in our community whisper about my daughter marrying a foreigner? With respect, Mr. Hassan, shouldn't your daughter's happiness matter more than what other people think? The question struck a nerve. Ahmed's voice became ice cold. Don't presume to lecture me about my daughter's happiness. I have been ensuring her happiness since the day she was born. I've given her the best education, the finest opportunities, and now I'm arranging a marriage with a suitable family that will provide her with security and respect for the rest of her life. James could see he was losing ground rapidly, but he couldn't give up. But what if she doesn't love him? What if she loves someone else? Ahmed's fist came down hard on the desk. Love? Doctor, love is a luxury that comes after marriage, after stability, after security. Love grows between two people who are compatible, who come from similar backgrounds, who understand each other's worlds. What you and my daughter think is love is just infatuation based on the excitement of doing something forbidden. The dismissal of his feelings as mere infatuation stung James deeply, but he tried to remain diplomatic. Mr. Hassan, I understand your concerns about cultural differences, but love and compatibility aren't limited by nationality. Fatima and I share the same values, the same dreams for making the world a better place. Ahmed stood up again, signaling that the conversation was coming to an end. Doctor, I appreciate that you came to speak with me directly instead of continuing to deceive me. But my answer is no, absolutely not. I will not allow this marriage, and I forbid you from seeing my daughter again. James rose as well, his heart sinking, but his resolve still intact. Mr. Hassan, I respect you as Fatima's father, but I can't promise to stay away from her. We care too deeply for each other. The threat in James's words was unmistakable, and Ahmed's response was swift and decisive. Doctor, if you truly care for my daughter, you will stay away from her, because if you don't, the consequences will be severe for both of you, but especially for her. In our society, it is the woman who pays the highest price for such scandals. As James left the office, both men knew that this confrontation had changed everything. Ahmed immediately called his driver and headed home, his mind already formulating plans to protect his family's honor and his daughter's future. He had no idea that his decision to reject James would set in motion a chain of events that would bring tragedy to his doorstep and leave him questioning everything he thought he knew about love, honor, and what truly mattered in life. Ahmed Hassan stormed into his house like a man possessed, his face dark with anger and disappointment. The confrontation with Dr. Mitchell had shaken him more than he cared to admit, not just because of the deception, but because he had seen genuine sincerity in the young man's eyes. However, sincerity wasn't enough to overcome years of tradition and social expectations. He found Fatima in the garden, reading a book of poetry under her favorite jasmine tree. She looked up at her father's approach, and the moment she saw his expression, her heart dropped. The storm she had been dreading was finally here. Fatima. Ahmed's voice was controlled but cold. We need to talk. Now. She followed him into his study, her legs feeling weak with each step. Once inside, Ahmed closed the door and turned to face his daughter, his disappointment evident in every line of his face. Dr. James Mitchell came to see me today, he began, watching as all color drained from Fatima's face. He told me about your secret relationship over the past 6 months. He asked for your hand in marriage. Fatima sank into a chair, her worst fears realized. Baba, I can explain. Explain? Ahmed's voice rose. How do you explain lying to your family for 6 months? How do you explain meeting secretly with a man, putting our family's honor at risk? How do you explain making me look like a fool, who doesn't even know what his own daughter is doing? Tears streamed down Fatima's face. I never meant to hurt you, Baba. I was scared to tell you because I knew you wouldn't understand. You're right. I don't understand. Ahmed slammed his hand on the desk. I don't understand how the daughter I raised with such care and love could betray my trust so completely. I don't understand how you could risk everything our family stands for some romantic fantasy with a foreigner. Fatima looked up at her father through her tears. It's not a fantasy, Baba. I love him, and he loves me. We want to build a life together. Love? Ahmed scoffed. What do you know about love, Fatima? You're 23 years old. You've lived a sheltered life, never wanting for anything. This infatuation you call love will fade, but the scandal you've created will follow our family forever. James is a good man, Baba. He's educated. He has a respectable career. He wants to convert to Islam, and he's willing to stay in Pakistan. What more could you want? Ahmed sat down heavily, suddenly looking older than his years. What I want, Beta, is for you to understand that marriage isn't just about what two people want. It's about families coming together, about compatibility of backgrounds, about building a stable future. This doctor may be a good man, but he's not right for you. How can you say that when you've never even tried to get to know him? I don't need to know him personally to know that this match is wrong. Fatima, I've arranged marriages for your cousins, and they're all happy now. I have 20 years more experience than you in understanding what makes a marriage work, Arima wiped her tears and tried to compose herself. Baba, with all due respect, times are changing. Women today want different things from marriage than our mother's generation did. Ahmed's expression softened slightly at his daughter's respectful tone, but his resolve remained firm. Times may change, Beta, but human nature doesn't. You think you love this man because he's different, because he represents something exciting and forbidden. But when the novelty wears off, when you're faced with the real challenges of being married to someone from a completely different world, you'll realize that I was trying to protect you. You're protecting me from happiness, Baba. The words hit Ahmed harder than he expected. He had always prided himself on being a loving father who put his children's welfare above everything else. To hear his beloved daughter accuse him of denying her happiness was like a knife to his heart. I'm protecting you from making a mistake that will haunt you for the rest of your life, he said quietly. Fatima, I forbid you from seeing this man again. Tomorrow we're going to meet the Malik family, and you will conduct yourself appropriately. Fatima stood up, her sadness transforming into defiance. And if I refuse? Ahmed looked at his daughter, seeing a strength and stubbornness in her eyes that reminded him of himself at that age. Then you will bring shame not just on yourself but on your mother, your brother, and everyone who bears our family name. Is your infatuation worth destroying all of that? That night, the Hassan household was tense and silent. Mrs. Hassan tried to mediate between her husband and daughter, but both were too hurt and angry to listen to reason. Ahmed couldn't understand how his obedient, respectful daughter had deceived him so thoroughly. Fatima couldn't understand how the father who had always encouraged her education and independence could be so rigid about her personal choices. Meanwhile, James waited anxiously for news of Ahmed's reaction. When Fatima finally called him late, that night her voice was hoarse from crying. He said, "No, James. He absolutely refused and forbade me from seeing you again. I have to meet the Malik family tomorrow." James felt his world crashing down around him. Fatima, we can't give up now. If your father won't accept me, maybe we need to consider other options. What other options? James, you don't understand the position I'm in. If I go against my father's wishes, I'll be cut off from my family forever. In our society, a woman without her family's support has nothing. You'll have me, James said desperately. We can build our own life, our own family. At what cost? Fatima sobbed. I'll lose my parents, my brother, my entire support system. I'll be labeled as a girl who brought shame to her family. Do you think I can be happy knowing that my happiness came at such a price? James was quiet for a long moment, finally understanding the impossible choice Fatima was facing. "What do you want to do?" "I don't know," she whispered. "I honestly don't know." The next morning brought the dreaded meeting with the Malik family. Fatima went through the motions mechanically, sitting quietly while the families discussed the potential match. Tariq Malik seemed like a decent enough young man, well-educated and polite, but every word he spoke felt like another nail in the coffin of her dreams. Ahmed watched his daughter throughout the meeting, noting her subdued demeanor and forced smiles. A part of him felt guilty for pushing her into this when she was clearly unhappy, but he convinced himself that he was doing the right thing for her long-term welfare. After the Maliks left, expressing their interest in moving forward with the engagement, Ahmed found Fatima alone in the garden again. "They're a good family, Beta. Tariq seems like a sensible boy who will take care of you." Fatima looked up at her father with eyes that held no hope. "If you say so, Baba." The defeat in her voice troubled Ahmed more than her earlier defiance had. This wasn't the reaction of a daughter who was grateful for her father's guidance. This was the reaction of someone whose spirit was being slowly crushed. That evening, as Ahmed sat alone in his study, he began to have his first doubts about the course he had chosen. His daughter, who had always been the light of the house, now moved through their home like a ghost. His wife had started giving him worried looks, though she hadn't yet challenged his decision directly. But Ahmed pushed these doubts aside, telling himself that time would heal Fatima's heartbreak, and that she would eventually thank him for saving her from what he was certain would have been a disastrous marriage. He had no way of knowing that his stubborn refusal to even consider James as a potential son-in-law would soon lead to consequences more devastating than any social scandal he was trying to avoid. 2 weeks had passed since the confrontation, and the Hassan household felt like a battlefield where a ceasefire had been declared, but no peace treaty signed. Fatima moved through her days like a sleepwalker, performing her duties mechanically, while her spirit remained elsewhere. The engagement preparations with the Malik family were proceeding, but every discussion about wedding dates and ceremony details felt to her like planning her own funeral. Ahmed threw himself into his work with unusual intensity, staying late at the office and taking on new projects that demanded his complete attention. He told himself he was building a stronger financial foundation for his daughter's future, but deep down, he was avoiding the haunted look in Fatima's eyes and the growing concern in his wife's voice. Mrs. Hassan had tried numerous times to discuss the situation with her husband, but Ahmed had shut down every conversation with firm declarations that he knew what was best for their daughter. However, she couldn't ignore the dramatic change in Fatima's behavior, the way her daughter barely ate, rarely spoke, and had lost all interest in activities that once brought her joy. James had respected Fatima's request for space to think, but the separation was tearing him apart. His work at the hospital provided some distraction, but every child he treated reminded him of the future he and Fatima had dreamed of building together, establishing medical facilities that would serve Pakistan's most vulnerable populations. The breaking point came on a rainy Thursday evening. Fatima had been feeling unwell for several days, complaining of headaches and fatigue. Initially, the family attributed it to stress from the engagement preparations. But when she collapsed during dinner, clutching her chest and struggling to breathe, Ahmed's world shifted on its axis. "Call Dr. Rashid immediately," Ahmed shouted as he cradled his daughter, whose face had turned alarmingly pale. "Tell him it's an emergency." Mrs. Hassan was already on the phone, her voice shaking as she described Fatima's symptoms to their family. "Doctor." Within minutes, Dr. Rashid arrived, but after examining Fatima, his expression grew grave. "Ahmed Bhai, I need to be honest with you. Fatima's symptoms suggest a serious cardiac issue. Her pulse is irregular, and she's showing signs of heart failure. I don't have the equipment here to properly diagnose her condition. She needs to be taken to the cardiac center immediately." Ahmed felt the blood drain from his face. "Heart failure? But she's only 23. How is that possible? Sometimes young people develop heart conditions that go undetected until they become severe. The stress she's been under lately could have exacerbated an underlying condition. We need to get her to someone who specializes in cardiac problems right away." As they rushed Fatima to Karachi's leading cardiac center, Ahmed's mind was in chaos. His daughter, his precious Beta, was fighting for her life, and all his concerns about social status and family honor suddenly seemed petty and meaningless. At the hospital, Dr. Rashid spoke quietly with the cardiac team, explaining Fatima's symptoms and medical history. The senior cardiologist on duty reviewed her initial tests and shook his head grimly. "This is a complex case that requires immediate intervention. We need our best cardiac surgeon, but Dr. Hamid is out of the country and Dr. Khan is in surgery with another critical patient. We might need to consider transferring her to a facility with more specialized equipment." "No," Dr. Rashid said suddenly, snapping his fingers as he remembered something. "There's a British cardiologist working here in the city with the humanitarian mission, Dr. James Mitchell. I've heard excellent things about his expertise, particularly with complex cases like this. He might be available." Ahmed's world stopped. The name hit him like a physical blow. The same man he had forbidden from seeing his daughter might now be the only person capable of saving her life. "Are you sure there's no one else?" Ahmed asked desperately, though even as he spoke, he realized how selfish the question was. "Mr. Hassan," the senior cardiologist said seriously, "your daughter's condition is critical. Dr. Mitchell is one of the finest cardiac surgeons I've ever worked with. He saved lives that others said were impossible to save. If you want your daughter to have the best chance of survival, we need to call him immediately." Ahmed stood frozen, his mind reeling with the cruel irony of the situation. The man he had rejected as unworthy of his daughter might be the only one who could save her life. His pride warred with his love for Fatima, but as he looked at his daughter's pale, unconscious form on the hospital bed, there was really no choice to make. "Call him," Ahmed whispered, his voice breaking. "Call Dr. Mitchell." Within 20 minutes, James arrived at the hospital, having rushed from his apartment the moment he received the emergency call. His professional training kicked in immediately, but when he saw Fatima lying unconscious with monitors beeping around her, his composure nearly cracked. Ahmed watched as James examined his daughter with gentle, expert hands, noting the way the young doctor's face showed both professional concern and personal anguish. For the first time, Ahmed saw James not as a threat to his family's honor, but as a man who genuinely loved his daughter. "Mr. Hassan," James said quietly after reviewing all the test results, "Fatima has a rare congenital heart condition that's been worsened by stress. She needs immediate surgery to repair a valve defect and address an arrhythmia. The procedure is complex, but I believe I can help her." Ahmed's voice was barely audible. "Will she survive?" James met his eyes directly, and Ahmed saw in them the same fear he was feeling. "I'll do everything in my power to save her, sir, but I need you to know that this is a high-risk surgery. There are no guarantees." Mrs. Hassan, who had been silent until now, suddenly grabbed James's arm. "Dr. Sahib, please save our daughter. She's our everything." James nodded solemnly. "I understand, Mrs. Hassan. I need you both to know that Fatima means everything to me too. I'll give her my absolute best." As James left to prepare for surgery, Ahmed remained staring at his daughter's unconscious form. Mrs. Hassan finally spoke the words that had been weighing on her heart. "Ahmed, that boy loves our daughter. I can see it in his eyes. Maybe we've been wrong about him." Ahmed's shoulders sagged as the weight of his decisions crashed down on him. "What have I done, Nasreen? What if I've been so concerned about protecting her honor that I've forgotten about protecting her happiness? What if she dies knowing that I rejected the one person who could have made her truly happy?" "Don't think like that," Mrs. Hassan said, though her own voice was shaking. "Dr. Mitchell will save her. And when she recovers, maybe we can have a different conversation about her future." The surgery lasted 6 grueling hours. Ahmed paced the waiting room corridors like a caged animal, his mind tormented by regret and fear. Several times other doctors emerged from the operating theater to give updates, but James remained focused on the delicate work of repairing his beloved's damaged heart. Finally, as dawn was breaking over Karachi, James emerged from surgery, exhausted but smiling. Ahmed and Mrs. Hassan rushed to him immediately. "The surgery was successful," James announced, his voice hoarse with fatigue. "Fatima's heart is functioning normally now. She'll need time to recover, but she's going to Be fine. Ahmed felt his knees buckle with relief. Without thinking, he embraced James, tears streaming down his face. Thank you, doctor. Thank you for saving my daughter's life. James accepted the embrace, understanding that this moment represented more than gratitude for a successful surgery. It was the beginning of a healing process that would affect all their lives. Mr. Hassan, James said quietly, I need you to know that I didn't save Fatima's life to earn your approval or to prove anything. I did it because I love her, and I would do anything to protect her. Ahmed looked at this young man who had worked through the night to save his daughter's life, and suddenly, all his objections about nationality and social status seemed foolish and irrelevant. Doctor, I owe you an apology. I judged you without knowing you. I let my pride and my fears blind me to your character. When Fatima finally woke up 2 days later, her first words were James's name. Ahmed watched from the doorway as James held her hand and explained what had happened, how her body had been fighting a battle she didn't even know about, and how the stress of recent weeks had made everything worse. I thought I was going to die without ever seeing you again, Fatima whispered, tears rolling down her cheeks. You're not going anywhere, James said firmly. Your father called me to save you, and now we have a chance to start over, all of us. Ahmed entered the room, his face showing a transformation that surprised even himself. The proud, stubborn businessman had been replaced by a humbled father who had almost lost what mattered most to him. Beta, he said to Fatima, I've been a foolish old man. I almost lost you because I was more concerned about what other people might think than about what would make you happy. Dr. Mitchell has shown me what kind of man he truly is, and I want to ask for both your forgiveness. Fatima looked back and forth between her father and James, hardly believing what she was hearing. Baba, does this mean? 6 months after Fatima's life-saving surgery, the Hassan household buzzed with excitement and preparation. The same garden where Ahmed had once confronted his daughter about her secret relationship now bloomed with marigolds and roses arranged for a wedding celebration that would blend Pakistani traditions with respectful accommodations for the groom's British heritage. Ahmed stood in his study, adjusting his traditional sherwani, while looking at a photograph from James and Fatima's simple nikah ceremony the previous week. The intimate religious ceremony had been attended only by immediate family members and close friends, allowing James to formally convert to Islam in a meaningful way, rather than as a mere formality. The past months had brought remarkable changes to Ahmed's worldview. Watching James's dedication to Fatima during her recovery, seeing him learn Urdu with earnest determination, and observing his genuine respect for Pakistani culture, had gradually transformed Ahmed's initial resistance into genuine admiration. The boy has surprised me at every turn, Ahmed confided to his brother, who had come to help with wedding preparations. Not only did he save Fatima's life, but he's embraced our culture with such sincerity. He even insisted on paying a proper haq mehr and following all our traditions. His brother nodded approvingly. Sometimes Allah shows us that our plans aren't always the best plans. James has proven himself in ways that Tariq Malik never could have. The mention of the Malik family reminded Ahmed of one of his most difficult conversations in recent months. Explaining to them why the engagement had been called off had required delicate diplomatic skills, but when he shared the story of Fatima's medical emergency and James's role in saving her life, even they had to acknowledge that this was clearly meant to be. In her bedroom, Fatima sat still as her female relatives applied intricate henna patterns to her hands, their cheerful chatter filling the room with joy. Her mother fussed over the elaborate red lehenga that had been specially designed for the celebration, while her cousins teased her about her obvious happiness. "You're glowing, Fatima," her cousin Aisha remarked. "I've never seen a bride look so radiantly happy." Fatima smiled, touching the delicate gold necklace that James had given her, a piece that incorporated both British and Pakistani design elements. "I keep thinking about how close we came to losing everything. When I was lying in that hospital bed, I thought my stubbornness had cost me both my father's love and my chance at happiness with James." Her mother, who had become one of James's strongest supporters, patted her daughter's shoulder gently. "Beta, Sometimes the most beautiful flowers grow from the most difficult soil. Your father needed to see James's true character, and perhaps James needed to prove to himself that his love was strong enough to overcome any obstacle. Meanwhile, at a hotel nearby, James was getting ready with the help of his parents, who had flown in from London for the celebration. His mother was still adjusting to the colorful chaos of a Pakistani wedding, but his father had embraced the festivities with enthusiasm. "I must admit, James," his father said while helping him with the golden sara that would traditionally cover his face during the Barat procession, "when you first told us you were converting to Islam to marry a Pakistani girl, your mother and I had our concerns, but after meeting Fatima and her family, we can see why you fell in love with her and this culture." James's mother added, "The way Ahmed Sahib has welcomed us into his family, despite our initial cultural differences, has been truly touching. He's gone out of his way to make sure we understand and participate in all the traditions." As evening approached, the Barat procession began with James arriving on a decorated white horse, surrounded by dancing relatives and friends from both families. The sight of his British parents trying to dance to doll beats while wearing traditional Pakistani clothes brought tears of laughter and joy to many eyes. Ahmed waited at the entrance of his home to welcome his new son-in-law, a moment he had once thought would bring him shame but now filled him with pride. As James dismounted from the horse and approached him, Ahmed placed his hands on the young man's shoulders. "Welcome to our family, Beta," Ahmed said, using the affectionate term that signified James's new status as a son. "You've already proven yourself to be the kind of man any father would be honored to call his son-in-law." James touched his father-in-law's feet in the traditional gesture of respect, then embraced him warmly. "Thank you, Baba John. I promise to spend my life making Fatima happy and honoring the trust you've placed in me." The wedding celebration that followed was a magnificent fusion of cultures. Traditional Qawwali singers performed alongside a small orchestra playing English folk songs that James had taught them. The menu featured both Pakistani delicacies and British favorites, and the decorations incorporated roses for England and jasmine for Pakistan. During the Rukhsati ceremony, when Fatima was traditionally supposed to leave her father's home, Ahmed struggled to maintain his composure. This moment, which he had once dreaded as a loss of his daughter to an inappropriate match, now represented the beautiful culmination of a love story that had taught him valuable lessons about judgment, acceptance, and what truly mattered in life. "Take care of her," Ahmed whispered to James as he formally handed over his daughter's hand. "She's been the light of our home for 23 years. "She'll always be the light of your home, Baba John," James replied. "But now she'll be the light of our home too, and you'll always be welcome there." As the celebrations wound down, Ahmed found himself reflecting on the events that had led to this moment. His initial rejection of James had nearly cost him his daughter's life and definitely would have cost him her happiness. The experience had taught him that true honor came not from adhering rigidly to social expectations, but from recognizing good character and genuine love, regardless of its packaging. Mrs. Hassan joined her husband as they watched James and Fatima interact with their guests, noting how naturally they worked together as a team, how James had learned to greet elder relatives with appropriate respect, and how Fatima glowed with a happiness that had been missing during her engagement to Tariq. "You made the right decision in the end," she told her husband. "Look how happy she is." Ahmed nodded, his eyes moist with emotion. "I nearly let my pride destroy her happiness. If she hadn't fallen ill, if James hadn't been the one to save her life, I might have forced her into a loveless marriage while the man who truly understood and cherished her was sent away." The next morning, as James and Fatima prepared to leave for their honeymoon in the northern areas of Pakistan, Ahmed pulled his new son-in-law aside for a private conversation. "James, I need you to know that my regret isn't just about almost losing Fatima or about misjudging you. My biggest regret is that I let fear and convention blind me to what should have been obvious from the beginning. That character, love, and respect are more important than nationality or social expectations." James clasped his father-in-law's hand firmly. "Baba John, we all make decisions based on our understanding at the time. What matters is that you were willing to change your mind when presented with new information. That takes real strength and wisdom. A year later, Ahmed beamed with pride as he held his first grandchild, a beautiful baby girl with James's blue eyes and Fatima's delicate features. The child would grow up bilingual, bicultural, and blessed with grandparents who had learned that love truly knows no boundaries. As he rocked his granddaughter to sleep, Ahmed often thought about the lesson that had cost him so much anguish to learn. His wealthy textile empire had taught him about business success, but his daughter's love story had taught him about life success. He had learned that a father's job wasn't to choose his daughter's happiness for her, but to recognize and support it when she found it herself. The story became something of a legend in their social circle, inspiring other families to look beyond traditional prejudices when evaluating their children's choices. Ahmed never tired of telling people that the best son-in-law he could have asked for had come disguised as his worst nightmare, and that sometimes the greatest blessings come wrapped in packages we initially want to reject. James and Fatima established. Their medical foundation is planned, with Ahmed as one of the primary benefactors. The foundation provided free cardiac care to underprivileged children throughout Pakistan, ensuring that other families would never have to choose between proper medical treatment and financial ruin. It became a lasting testament to the love story that had transformed not just two hearts but an entire family's understanding of what truly mattered in life.